Hey, what's up, Leaving the Theater listeners? It's me, Ronald Young Jr., and it is Oscar season. The Academy Awards are on March 27th. They are rapidly approaching, but that means I have a lot of movies to review between now and then. I have over 40 movies to watch, and I'm going to try to review and post all of them here in the Leaving the Theater feed. Now, I'm going to be doing all the main categories. Best Picture, Best Actor and Actress, Best Supporting Actress and Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, Best Animated Feature, Best Documentary Feature. I'm going to try to watch all of the movies that span all of these categories. So if you listen to my reviews, you guys will have a clear idea of everything that is nominated for an award by the time you watch the award ceremonies. I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to talk about character development. I'm going to talk about things where the pacing is too slow, where the pacing is too fast. I'm going to talk about cuts and acting and writing and direction. All of those good things that we think about a lot when we watch the Oscars. If there's time, I'm also going to watch the best animated shorts, the best live action shorts, and the best documentary shorts. I might not do reviews on those, but check out my Instagram or my Twitter at ohitsBigRon. That's at ohitsBigRon, and you can get my thoughts on those as well. The only movies I will not review are Dune and West Side Story because I've already reviewed them. You can find them in the feed right now, both nominated for Best Picture and numerous other awards. And I will not be doing The Lost Daughter because I started watching it and it was really boring and I don't want to waste my time. So please forgive me for that one. But everything else, if you see it nominated, try to watch it so you can follow along. Now, I know that you're not necessarily going to listen to every episode here, but what I want y'all to do is to be able to come back to the Leaving the Theater feed, pop in on an episode and be like, ooh, what did Ronald think about this one? Or, ooh, what did he think about this one? Oh my God, what's going on? So you guys will have that opportunity to do that in the feed. So I'm very, very excited. And before we start the show, please don't forget to fill out the listener survey. It's in the show notes right now. Filling out the survey helps me so much. It gives me information that I need to help grow the audience. So please jump into the show notes, click the link, and complete that listener survey. And with that, let's get to today's episode, Encanto. A family of superhumans live in an anthropomorphic house in the Disney animated film Encanto. Mirabel, a young member of the family madrigal who mysteriously has no superpowers, goes on a journey to find out why the house and her family are suddenly losing their magic. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. All right, this is Ronald, and I am on the couch after watching Encanto. Directed by Jared Bush and Byron Howard, written by Charise Castro Smith and Jared Bush, starring Stephanie Beatriz, Maria Cecilia Botero, John Leguizamo, Mauro Castillo, Jessica Darrow, Angie Cepeda, Carolina Gaitan, Diane Guerrero, and Wilmer Valderrama. Almost messed up on Wilmer Valderrama of all the names. Nominated for Best Animated Feature, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Lin-Manuel Miranda's Dos Oruguitas, and available on Disney+. So this is of course, Best Animated Feature, not nominated for Best Picture, which I agree with. I do not think that this movie was necessarily one of the best of the year, but certainly should be in the discussion for Best Animated Feature Film when it comes to the Academy Awards. This movie is about the family madrigal who I believe they're in Colombia, and there the grandmother, Abuela, and her husband are trying to escape oppression, and as they try to escape, the husband is killed, And right before they're about to be killed, a miracle happens, and a candle, which houses the power of this magic, appears, and it builds a house for them and gives everybody in the power in the family magical powers that are useful to continue to help the family and defend them against oppressors, and kind of just to help them to survive. So all of the people in the family have magical powers except for one of the younger members of the family, Maribel. Maribel, for me, is the best part of this movie. The story is told from her perspective. It starts off with her singing the song, The Family Madrigal, and she goes through each member of the family, what their power is, and kind of explains the whole story to everybody, and we kind of see where it's starting off. The central conflict of the film is that there are cracks happening in Casita, which is this anthropomorphic house, and it's basically that because cracks are showing in the Casita, it means that the magic is actually at risk. So we spend the rest of the movie going with Maribel as she kind of tries to uncover what the problem is. So I'm hoping that everybody has seen it. If you have, just know I'm going to get into spoilers, so you should listen. I mean, you should stop if you haven't seen it, and go back and watch the movie, then come back to this. This is a Disney animated feature film, and normally Disney comes strong. I mean, years ago they came with Pixar. Now Disney is doing all of these. These are like Disney originals, if you will. Now the new ones that are coming out, like Encanto and Frozen, these are Disney originals. Now these are the new Disney princesses, the ones that we're seeing now, who aren't necessarily princesses in a lot of ways. So seeing the previews for this one, I was excited to see it. I've watched this movie. This is now my third time. And the third time I've seen it was I liked it the most after the third time. I watched it one time, and I remember I watched it at the same time that my friend Sarah watched it, and we both were like, we didn't like this so much. Second time, I watched it, and we both had the same reaction. We were going out in the world listening to other people, and they were like, oh my God, Encanto is so good, it's so good, it's so good. And we were like, wait, was this movie good? And so we went back and watched it again, and we had the same reaction. We're like, oh, yeah, no, it was pretty good. And now that I watched it for the third time, I think I've come, and now I almost want to say, do I need to watch all movies 3 times? But I've settled on my conclusions, and I've kind of morphed an opinion between the first and the second time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I thought that the music didn't have much to do with the plot. It wasn't pushing things along, that the plot was too narrow. It was too just hyper-focused on just the family. It wasn't really talking about why this was important to anyone else. And it just didn't hit. But also, I should tell you, I probably slept through half of the movie. So every time I woke up, I'm like, oh, this is dumb. I don't know what's happening. Granted, I didn't plan on reviewing it back then. That was the first viewing. The second viewing, I watched it with a more critical eye. And I realized that, okay, this is a very solid movie. There's solid pieces here. It's not perfect by any means, but neither is The Family Madrigal. Hey-o. I felt like the music was good. It was definitely pertinent to the plot. It was definitely catchy. And I really enjoyed Luisa. The second time I watched it, I realized I hated Abuela. I hated her. And I remember I tweeted about it. I talked about it. Hate Abuela. We all agree. We hate Abuela. She's obviously the antagonist of the movie. And then the third time I watched it, I really settled in as to what I think this movie did wrong when it comes to Abuela. So we find out that Abuela is essentially lying to everyone about there being cracks in the house and that the magic growing weaker. She knew that the magic was going weaker, but she didn't know why. And because Maribel knew that the magic was growing weaker and was trying to figure out why and how to save it, the grandmother was interpreting all of Maribel's actions as a threat to the magic itself. And she used Maribel as a scapegoat for something that she knew to be factual, even though she's trying to hide it from all the townspeople, even though the family also knew what was going on, which I felt like was completely garbage scenario. At this point, Abuela runs her son Bruno out of town, out of the house, and not runs. He kind of leaves, but she doesn't invite him back. And you could take from that what you may. And she's obviously also at odds with Maribel, which isn't, And the way it manifests is like, Maribel is a young person. So it starts early in the movie with her saying that thing to her about where she says, yo, if you don't have any magic, you could just step aside, which is really rude. So I feel like if I'm writing this movie, if you're going to have this character who's this strong, who she's a historical character, she's supposed to be a good person, you know she's going to have and you know that she's going to have a redemptive arc at the end, essentially. So you have all this thing. She's at odds with Maribel. Maribel's trying to find out what the magic is going on. Grandma's trying to keep it a secret from everyone and also find a scapegoat for all of this. She decides that the scapegoat is Maribel while also continuing to spread her lies. But when it comes to the climax of the movie and essentially the house is destroyed and Maribel and grandmother at odds, and Maribel turns to the grandmother and says, no, you're the reason why the magic is gone, not me. You keep trying to force us all to be perfect, and it's driving everyone nuts, and rightfully so. She says this as a speech, and then the house falls apart. And I remember shortly after that, Maribel leaves because the candle goes out and the magic and the house is gone, and Maribel is off in the woods. And when her grandmother comes up, it's all of a sudden her grandmother has this big change of heart. But we've never seen anything in the rest of the movie that would indicate that this person exists inside the grandmother. And I know now there's probably some of you that are like, oh, well, maybe this is the event that changed your mind. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but it feels, and I don't mean unrealistic in the sense of I'm watching a magical movie, but in terms of emotional, it does not feel emotionally realistic for her to have that one moment and then all of a sudden say, I've seen the error of my ways from the very beginning to end. I understand it's a kid's movie, but I feel like they could have left some breadcrumbs to kind of make us sympathize with grandmother more, because by the time she has this redemptive arc, I'm sitting there watching it saying, I don't buy it. And your one apology is not enough, because you've essentially ruined this young lady from the first time that she was supposed to get her gift until now, which, arguably is, I don't know how many times, 5, 6, 7 years of time that you think that you're not good enough to be around your family. And that was garbage. There was no indication that I love my family and y'all are good enough whether you have a gift or not, which is kind of the lesson that is taught from this afterwards, which I still think is a strong lesson that could have been incorporated in this film from the very beginning. But for it to be like, oh, what's the lesson to the story? Oh, well, everybody's good no matter what, whether you have a gift or not. I'm like, no, yes, but I think we kind of like start in a closer place and maybe even have a different antagonist for the cracks and why the magic's going, and then maybe even question and say, do we even need the magic? Because obviously, if the answer is no, then turn the magic off and let's just, work hard and work together. Because at the end of the movie, because the magical house is destroyed, all the townspeople come together and they say, we don't have any gifts, but you have all of us. So they build the house and bring it back together. And then immediately they put a doorknob on the house and the magic comes back and Casita's back. And all of a sudden, so I'm like, did you unwrite your lesson? Because now these people just had their house built by the townspeople who have no gifts. And now everyone in the house all got their gifts back. All of a sudden, Casita's magical again. So you're sitting here looking at this and I'm like, well, what was the lesson that I learned? You just said we didn't need them. So like, why do we have them again? And why is everything magical again? And it's, I think that, the obvious answer is because it's a Disney movie and that's what it is. We want to have magic. We want to have our cake and eat it too. And I think all of that's great, but I think that's all of the reasons why, not my favorite. All the reasons why I don't think this movie is necessarily perfect. Now, let me talk about the music real quick. This movie is nominated for Best Song for Dos Oruguitas, Two Little Caterpillars. And that's not the best song in this movie. And I think everyone listening to this knows it's not even the best. As a matter of fact, it might be the worst song in this movie. Depending on, I'm thinking it's probably a toss-up between this song and Isabella's song. But obviously, I think the contenders for number one song in this movie is the title song, The Family Madrigal, obviously Pressure. Then there's Pressure. There's Waiting for a Miracle, which I think should have been the song that should have been submitted because I think that's a more emotional song and really it really speaks to what the coda of the movie is supposed to be. And then, of course, y'all know I'm saved it for last on purpose. We Don't Talk About Bruno. We Don't Talk About Bruno was a shoo-in for an Oscar, but it was not nominated. Instead, they put up Dos Oruguitas. And the reason why that happened is because the window for the Oscars closed. It was a little tighter this year, which means that submissions had to be put in such a time that Disney had to guess which song would be most well received off of this movie, which means that they submitted the one that they thought was like the theme of the movie, which was Dos Oruguitas, which it is in fact not. And this is one of those things where you kind of like need to listen to what people are saying about your property, how it's resonating, what they're hearing. But the song that took over Twitter and social media generally for like the 2 to 3 weeks was We Don't Talk About Bruno. And so obviously that could have been a contender. In terms of a strong song that I think gives a good performance, I really think that my favorite song in the movie is Waiting for a Miracle, which is sung by Mirabelle early on as she's kind of singing her feelings about her not having powers, but her little cousin receiving his powers, which was, I mean, it was incredible. It was very moving, all of that. So, I think this is a good movie. I liked it. I think, like I said, it took me a while to get into it, but this is definitely something you can watch with your family, with your kids. I think it's something that people should watch together often. It's enjoyable. When it gets to the point, it does make I do enjoy the point that it gets to, but it wasn't necessarily perfect. And I see why I wasn't nominated for, Best Picture. Toy Story 3 was nominated for Best Picture as well as Best Animated Feature, which is kind of a nod to like how good the movie actually is. So, it was really good to see that movie get its due and see movies like that get its due. This wasn't necessarily that, but it was still very strong, and I'm glad that it's got nominated for Best Animated Feature. And I hope it wins. I hope it gets some more recognition and a lot more people get to see this. So, yeah. With that, I forgot to give a rating. So let me rewind that. I think good movie, and I would give it 3.5 of 5 stars. 3.5 stars. I think there's an eagle in the tree outside my window right now. This is incredible. Well, it's not an eagle, but it's a huge bird. It's a huge bird. Yeah, 3.5 of 5 stars is what I would give this movie. Very good. Not great necessarily, but very good. A very good movie. 3.5 of 5 stars. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of ohitsBigRon Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other ohitsBigRon Studio shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ohitsBigRon. That's at ohitsBigRon. If you like this show, I host another show on the Pushkin Industries podcast network called Solvable. Check that out wherever you listen. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. But until then, I'll be here on the couch.